They used to act like you didn't exist. No recognition, no acknowledgement, just silence. But silence is a dangerous thing. It lets people underestimate you. It gives you time to move, time to build, time to become something they never saw coming. And while they whispered in their small circles, convinced they had already buried your name, something was shifting. The foundations beneath them were breaking, and they didn't even realize it. Then it happened. Your name slipped through the cracks. A casual mention, a side remark, then another and another. Suddenly, it wasn't just a whisper, it was a murmur, then a conversation, then a wave. The project they ignored, they're studying it now, dissecting every detail like it's a secret formula for success. The work they once laughed at, it's their new standard. The name they refused to say. Now they can't stop saying it. Mahatma Gandhi declares, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And they did ignore you. They laughed, dismissed, rolled their eyes when you dared to dream beyond the limits they set for you. But now they're stuck in the part they never thought would come, the fight. They don't want to admit it, but you've changed the game. Their ego won't let them praise you outright, so they do it in secret. They study your moves, steal your ideas, copy your strategies. They disguise their imitation as inspiration, pretending they were always ahead. But they weren't. They were blind, and now they're scrambling to see. Someone mutters your name in a room you've never stepped foot in. Another says it with caution, as if speaking it aloud might summon you. A former critic declares it in admiration, but only when they think no one else is listening. But you don't need to be there to feel the shift. They're uncomfortable, restless, desperate to understand how the person they overlooked became the force they can't outrun. They double-check your old work, searching for what they missed. They replay past conversations, wondering if you gave them a clue, and they were too blind to see it. But it's too late. Your momentum is no longer a secret. Your name is no longer an afterthought. You don't have to demand their attention. Your success has already done that for you. And whether they admit it or not, they know. You built in silence, but the noise, that was always inevitable. They weren't supposed to find you, not yet. You weren't campaigning for recognition. You weren't begging for a seat at their table. You were just doing what you always did, moving in silence, creating, refining, mastering. But the world has a way of catching up to the ones who are truly ahead. A tech journalist writes your name into history, piecing together a timeline no one else saw coming. It's all there, they say, voice laced with realization. The blueprint, the groundwork, the vision, and somehow we missed it. They weren't the first to overlook you, but they might be the last. In boardrooms where power shifts with a single decision, your work is now a reference point. An executive declares, this strategy, this approach, was years ahead of its time. Papers shuffle, glances exchange. They know what this means. You weren't following trends. You were creating them. And while they were too busy chasing fleeting ideas, you were building something lasting. They dig deeper, searching for the moment you broke through. But there is no single moment, no flashy debut, no desperate grasp for attention, just the slow, unstoppable rise of something undeniable. Your ideas live in the systems they rely on. Your strategies shape their industries. Your name lingers in conversations you never asked to be part of. They don't say it outright, but you feel it, the recognition creeping in, the realization settling. The world didn't discover you. It woke up to the fact that you were always here. And now they can't move forward without acknowledging you. You didn't chase the limelight, but without even trying, you became the standard. They thought they had the power to erase you. They gathered in secret, whispered in shadows, convinced themselves that their influence could rewrite reality. You were a threat, long before you even realized it. They saw your potential before the world did, and that terrified them. Because people like them, they don't build, they don't create, they don't elevate, they control. And when they saw that they couldn't control you, they made a decision. You had to be silenced. So they moved in silence too. Not like you, with discipline, with purpose, with skill, but with desperation. A coordinated attack disguised as coincidence, a snub, a whisper campaign, a well-placed lie. They wanted your name to disappear. They wanted your work to be forgotten. They wanted the world to look at you and see nothing. But the thing about burying the truth, it doesn't stay hidden. A smear campaign meant to erase you has only made your name impossible to ignore. A critic demands, why were we told to disregard this person? A journalist questions, if they were so unimportant, why was there such an effort to silence them? An observer notices, the ones trying to erase them, why do they look so afraid? They wanted to control the narrative, but the story has taken on a life of its own. The people who never knew your name are now searching for it. The ones who never cared are now obsessed with knowing why your existence was seen as such a threat. The harder they fought to make you invisible, the more the world became determined to see you. And the ones who tried to erase you, they can't stop watching. They watch as their carefully constructed lies fall apart. They watch as their influence crumbles, as their whispers turn into screams, screams of denial, of damage control, of panic. Because you're still here. You were never meant to be an afterthought. You were never meant to be a footnote in their version of history. Now you are living proof of their failure. Every achievement you make, every mention of your name, every time someone references your work, it's a reminder. A wound they can't heal. A mistake they can't undo. They tried to silence you, but in doing so, they made sure you'd never be forgotten. They swore you were reckless. They called your ideas radical, too different, too unpredictable. And yet here they are, studying you. Former skeptics, the same ones who shook their heads and dismissed your work, now comb through every decision you made, tracing, analyzing, scrambling. Because somewhere along the way, they realized something chilling. You were right. They see it now, in the industries that collapsed, in the companies that crumbled, in the leaders who ignored the signs. Your methods, they weren't just theories. They were blueprints for survival. A high-ranking strategist says, if we had implemented this earlier, we could have avoided catastrophic losses. A researcher admits, I didn't understand their approach at first. Now I can't believe we overlooked it. A former critic confesses, I was wrong. They were ahead of their time. It isn't just talk. Your name appears in case studies, dissected in industry white papers, referenced in high-stakes discussions. Not as a footnote, not as a curiosity, but as a force that reshaped the landscape. And the ones who doubted you, they don't just respect you now. They need you. They lean into your strategies, hoping to salvage what they once destroyed. They try to reverse engineer your genius, desperate to replicate something they refused to acknowledge when it mattered. But here's the truth. They can't replicate you. Because what you built wasn't just a formula. It wasn't a lucky guess. It was vision. And vision can't be copied. It can't be stolen. It can't be retrofitted to serve those who only understand success after it happens. Your work speaks for itself in every model they adopt, in every breakthrough that traces back to you, in every moment they realize that the future they once laughed at is the present they now scramble to understand. They may never say your name outright, but it's already written everywhere. You were never supposed to be part of their world, not according to them. They built their towers, locked their doors, convinced themselves that influence was theirs to distribute. They believed they decided who mattered, but reality doesn't ask for permission. And power, real power, doesn't need an invitation. You moved with precision, built with intent, sharpened your instincts until they became something terrifying. Predictive, unstoppable, inevitable, and now they see it. Investment firms track your movements with silent urgency, mapping your career like a force of nature. Analysts say if they're involved, the odds of success skyrocket. Industry leaders whisper, how do they always know? How do they see the shifts before anyone else? The phone calls start. Names you never expected. Names that once ignored you, ridiculed you, dismissed you, now seek you out. They don't care about your past anymore. They don't care about the resistance you faced, the obstacles they once placed in front of you. They care about results. You deliver. The flood came, and their foundations cracked. A man once built a bridge that no one believed in. They mocked him, called his work unnecessary, a waste of effort, a waste of vision. Then the rains arrived. The river swelled, the ground beneath them turned to chaos, and every structure they trusted gone, except for one. The bridge they laughed at, the one they said would never be needed, it was the only thing standing. That is your story. And now, let us take a brief moment to honor the chosen among us. Here's to the ones who see the world differently. The silent guardians, the watchful souls, always awake, always vigilant. They don't fit the mold, and they wouldn't have it any other way. While others walk familiar paths, they forge their own, fighting unseen battles, illuminating the shadows. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. But if you feel it deep within, you'll know this is meant for you. No masks, no pretense, just truth. The Obsidian Inner Order is here, a place where kindred spirits gather to share wisdom, to connect, to transform. Over 450 strong, united not by conformity but by purpose. If you're ready, you know where to find us. The link is in the description. If not, that's perfectly fine, because we're always here, watching over, making a difference in ways unseen. Here's to those who walk their own path, not for recognition, but because it's who they are. Here's to you. Thank you. Your inbox lights up. Names you haven't seen in years. Names that once rolled their eyes at your ideas. Names that didn't have the time for you until now. The messages are carefully worded, dripping with forced familiarity. I always knew you had something special. We should catch up sometime. I'd love to hear your thoughts on something. I've been following your work. Incredible stuff. Lies wrapped in politeness. They want you to believe they were always in your corner, that they always saw your value, that their silence, their absence never happened. But you remember the doors that didn't open, the calls that never came, the looks of doubt when you spoke your vision into existence. And now they hear your name in rooms they thought they controlled. They watch as their peers reference you, as leaders echo your ideas, as the world turns in your direction, and they regret. A former critic confesses, "I shouldn't have dismissed them so quickly." An old connection mutters, "We should have backed them when we had the chance." A once powerful skeptic admits, "I misjudged them." Regret is a quiet thing. They won't say it to your face. Instead, you'll hear it through the grapevine, through whispers passed between the same people who once shut you out. But their apologies don't come in words. They come in opportunities, the very ones they withheld from you. A company that once ignored your emails now asks for your insight. A leader who once doubted you now studies your methods. A competitor who once dismissed you now wants your approval. And yet something inside you remains untouched. Because admiration after the fact isn't admiration at all. It's recognition of a mistake. They don't respect you. They respect what you became, despite them. And when they reach out now, desperate for guidance, desperate to align themselves with you, desperate to rewrite history, you decide whether to answer. They used to make decisions without you, boardrooms filled with people who overlooked you, dismissed you, convinced themselves that your voice wasn't necessary. But something has changed. Your name carries weight now. Your presence shifts the dynamic. The same executives who once ignored you now insist on your involvement. A director declares, "We need their input before moving forward." A high-level strategist admits, "Their presence alone changes the game." A competitor mutters, "If they're backing this, we have no choice but to take it seriously." You don't have to speak to be heard. They watch how you move, how you command the room without effort, how conversations adjust the moment you arrive. Because being in the room with you, It's no longer a favor, it's a statement, a mark of credibility, a sign of power. The whispers behind closed doors aren't about whether you belong. They're about how they can secure your presence. Your silence, it's no longer overlooked, it's feared. Your hesitation, it's no longer ignored, it's analyzed. Your approval, it's no longer assumed, it's pursued. The tables haven't just turned, they've been replaced, because you no longer ask for a seat. You own the table, and they know it. They held the gates for so long, kept the power to themselves, controlled the flow of opportunities, decided who was worthy and who would be left outside. You were supposed to stay outside. That was their mistake. The walls they built to keep you out, they're crumbling. The systems that once protected them, they're under scrutiny. And the people who once trusted their authority, they're questioning everything. A journalist asks, why were these voices silenced for so long? An insider confesses, the truth is, we were never choosing the best. We were choosing the safest. A former gatekeeper mutters, we should have seen this coming. Because while they played their games behind closed doors, while they bent the rules to maintain their illusion of control, you kept moving. You didn't fight for scraps. You built your own foundation. You are the contrast. Where they manipulated, you stood firm. Where they lied, you remained honest. Where they stalled, you took action, and the world sees it now. Martin Luther King Jr. declares, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. This is justice, not because they gave in, not because they changed, but because they lost. They see their influence fading, their control weakening, their names tarnished. Your name is rising, your presence is undeniable, your success is proof that the system was never about ability, it was about control. But the world isn't under their control anymore. It's shifting, and it's shifting toward you. You never begged for attention. You didn't chase the spotlight, didn't demand validation, didn't force the world to see you. You just kept moving, kept building, kept perfecting your craft while they looked the other way. But truth has a way of surfacing, and now they see. A broadcaster announces, this name, this work, has been in motion for years, and somehow we all missed it. A former critic admits, we were wrong to dismiss them. A once powerful skeptic mutters, they didn't need us, we needed them. You didn't change, the world did. And now everything that was hidden is laid bare. The patterns, the breakthroughs, the undeniable proof. You were ahead all along. They can't ignore it. They can't spin it. They can't rewrite the truth anymore. Your work has spoken, louder than any argument, louder than any doubt, louder than the silence they once surrounded you with. Even when you say nothing, they're still listening. Because your silence isn't absence, it's power. You never asked to be a blueprint. You never set out to be the case study, the example, the name that future leaders whisper with admiration. But here you are. A professor lectures, this individual changed the industry, not by following the rules, but by redefining them. A researcher writes, their approach wasn't just unconventional, it was revolutionary. A student flips through pages, eyes widening as they scribble notes, absorbing the story of someone who defied the odds. They don't yet know they are reading about you. Your methods are now curriculum. Your strategies are syllabus material. The same institutions that once ignored you now teach your work, because you didn't just succeed, you reshaped the landscape, and the next generation is watching. They study how you moved when doors were closed, how you created opportunities when none existed, how you refused to shrink, refused to break, refused to accept the limits others placed on you. You are more than a success story. You are proof that the system was flawed, proof that greatness doesn't need permission, proof that perseverance always leaves a mark. A young student sits in a lecture hall, flipping through a case study, unaware that the name they're underlining, the strategies they're analyzing, the story that is igniting something inside them. It's yours. They don't know you yet, but they will. They spent years plotting against you, working in the shadows, manipulating, sabotaging, stacking the odds against you, convinced that they had the power to dictate your fate. But karma doesn't take orders. They're crumbling under the weight of their own schemes. A former rival whispers everything they did to sabotage them. It's coming back tenfold. An insider confesses the same traps they set are the ones they're falling into. An observer murmurs they look lost, desperate, while the one they tried to destroy, they're untouchable. Because while they spun their webs of deceit, you stayed focused. While they played their games, you played for something bigger. And now, the difference is undeniable. Their decisions are catching up to them. Their alliances are breaking apart. Their influence is fading faster than they can repair it. You remain untouched, focused, unbothered. Your energy is not wasted on revenge. You don't need to fight them. You don't even need to acknowledge them. Your rise is punishment enough. And the higher you climb, the clearer it becomes. They were never a threat. They were a lesson. This was never about luck. Your rise wasn't an accident. It wasn't a momentary spark that flickered under the weight of expectation. It was inevitable. Every move you made, every decision they ignored, every effort they dismissed, it all built to this. You did not force the world to see you. The world had no choice. The truth was always too powerful to remain buried. Your influence is not a trend. It is not a moment. It is the shift that forces everything else to realign. And now they watch, not with indifference, not with mockery, but with undeniable awe, because you are only getting started. There is no ceiling to break, no permission to seek, no gate left to keep you out. The path ahead is yours. The future bends to you. Your name carries weight. Your presence alters the landscape. Your existence is a force that cannot be undone. You were never chasing recognition. Recognition was always chasing you. Let them speak, let them study, let them question how they ever overlooked you. And now let them answer to you. Tell them, what shift do you see happening around you? How is the world adjusting to your presence? Because if they're watching, make sure they see everything.